So, a little bit about bats. You know, kind of like the wheels, I've heard lots of questions about bats and which are good ones, which aren't, you know, what are pitfalls on some. So I'm going to go with the cheapest first. Cheapest bat are your Masonite bats. They have a short life because as they get used, they start to puff up and they'll start to peel. They're not really abrasive resistant, but they're cheap and they're flippable. So you can use both sides of them. The next one up, in terms of expense, would be the wonderbat. These are kind of a new product. Not everybody probably carries them yet. But I've had issues with them. They cup. So they're not flat. And the holes are only drilled on one side, which means you can't flip it. With the Masonite ones, when they become cupped, you can flip them over and kind of uncup it by using it on the other side. Now, the wonderbats become cupped in extreme situations. Say you had to leave a pot on there for a week and it soaked up the water, it eventually is going to curl like that. In extreme cases, they say to wet the bat completely, let it soak for an hour, and then put it upright and it'll flatten it out. In the extreme cases of warpness, it doesn't work. We've had 2 for 2 now. 2 bats that made it when it wasn't an extreme warpage, but the 2 extreme ones are unusable. You know, they don't sit on the wheel anymore. They come right off the pins. The new wonderbats too also have rubber pins, rubber pinholes, so that they hold onto the bat better, which is a nice feature. But you know, if they're going to warp, you know, 50% of the time and make them unusable, you know, it's an expense that is hard to do. One of the solutions that we've thought about doing here in the studio is just drilling all the way through so you can flip them over. Because it's fine, a cup bat is fine if you're using it with the cup side up. It's not okay with the cup side down. Does that make sense? So with the bowed part up, you can throw on it just fine. So that's the wonderbat. Next in price is the, I believe it's Creative Industries bat, the plastic one with the grooves on the outside. These are great bat all around. They're not super expensive. They're harder to warp than the Masonite bats when you're picking up a heavy object. They are fairly cheap for a plastic bat, and the pins on them, or the pinholes on them, have one set that is cut, so it's tighter than the pin and spreads out when you push it onto the bat, or when you push it onto the wheel head. So it holds onto the bat, holds onto the wheel head better, which is important. You know, it sticks better. They're less likely to pop off as you're pulling up. You know, and it's a plastic bat. Next would be homemade bats. When I was in college, we all had to make our own set of bats, and this is the set that we got. I am unable in the hardware store to find one that has a plywood on one side and a smooth, like, veneer surface on the other. But if you can get a hold of it, these make great bats. They don't warp. You know, they're good forever. They're strong. They're not going to flex when you pick up a piece. And you've made them. You know, you've got some kind of control over your environment. And I like that too. In terms of specialty bats, wonderbat makes a bat system where you've got a square that fits into a bat. So this anchors onto the wheel head, and these little guys fit in. So that after you throw a mug or a small piece, you can pop the section out and put a new one in and keep throwing. I think if you learn how to pick up a small piece, you don't need these. But for the people that, you know, would rather use pot lifters or, you know, lots of bats, this saves space in your studio because you've only got a small little square that you need to, you know, keep on a shelf. So you can fit more pieces in that area rather than having to stack up bats. And they take up less space in the studio as well. Another one, wonderbat also makes the largest bat. I think this is a 2-foot bat. Doesn't say on it, but it's a big bat. I don't throw on these. I'll only trim on them because, you know, I don't want it to warp, and I forget how much these are, but I don't want to lose it. So store them flat, store them on, you know, the thing, and don't keep pieces on them for a long time. But it's great for trimming. Other little bats. Creative Industries also makes square bats. It's kind of like these, but they take up a little more room. But these fit right on the bat pins. You go, well, but it's square. It's okay. As long as you're throwing in the middle and you're not out to the edge, you're fine. And the last but not least are plaster bats. Plaster bats come in a variety of styles. Hydro bats are probably the best ones, but they're also very expensive and they're heavy. But they're really well made. I don't have one here. We don't use them in the studio. There are concerns with plaster in terms of reclaim and wedging and pop outs and all that. And that's a whole nother story, and I'm sure it would cause all sorts of the plaster people going, hey, wait, they're fine. But we don't really use them in the studio. This one does not have bat pins, and in the next video I'll show how to anchor a bat without bat pins, so the people that don't have bat pins get a chance to use bats as well. We use bats in the studio because we do. It's not a right or wrong thing. Some people I know use them so that they can take every piece off on a bat. Other people refuse to use bats because they wiggle around and everything. But I think if you use and you pick out a bat that's made for the situation that you want to do, you know, every bat's okay. Oh, other things. So, reason to choose one bat over another. Any of the absorbent bats are going to start to dry your piece out from the bottom. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. In terms of a plate or a large bowl, you do want an absorbent bat. So like a Masonite bat, one of the wonderbats, or plaster bat are going to be good. I like to use, you know, the Masonite bats because they're cheap. You know, they're almost like recyclable if you do wreck them. I like to use the plastic bats to trim on because it doesn't dry out the wads that you're using. And if I'm throwing a lot, you know, I'm not picking, like I'm throwing mugs or anything, I'm not picking the piece, I'm not leaving the piece on the bat when I pick it up. So I can throw on a plastic bat, you know, off the hump, or, you know, pieces that I'm not leaving on the bat. But any piece that I'm going to leave on the bat, I would use an absorbent bat. I think that's everything. I think so. If you got questions, post them. I'll put a price list of the bats on the side so you can kind of get an idea of, you know, what bat is more affordable for the uses that you want from it.